Hey Harvest, I hope you guys are doing great and coming today to begin to preach through a few sermons on philosophy of ministry. So we've talked about mission, we've talked about vision, we've talked about beliefs, so now we're going to talk about our philosophy, meaning how we're going to do things. And here's why that's so important. Because so many churches get caught up in how things are done. A lot of people I'm just going to be real honest with you. A lot of people get frustrated because things are done a certain way or a different way than maybe they were used to or whatnot. And so I think it's just important while we're still leading up to our launch date to kind of take some time, talk about philosophy of ministry, to talk about some of our core values, unpack those a little bit more. And so today we're going to start with something that we all really love. But before we get there, I want to share with you some pictures on the screen. So you guys will probably know this one right here. Blockbuster Video. There are some of you that will know what Blockbuster Video is, have visited a Blockbuster Video, and there will probably be some of you that have never heard of Blockbuster Video at all, which is kind of hard for me to believe because back in the day when we wanted to go and have movies and rent movies, that's where we would go, is Blockbuster Video, take them home, put them in the VCR or the DVD player, and then we would watch movies. So some of you guys know that really, really well. How about this one? This is Circuit City. As a matter of fact, I was just talking to Chase. Chase doesn't even know what Circuit City is. So I know that some of you don't even know what Circuit City is. Circuit City used to be a place that you would go and get your electronics. You get DVDs and CDs and telephones and all types of electronics at Circuit City. They are now no longer in business. And so Circuit City was a great place as well. And then how about Sears? This one is Sears. Some of you probably still see Sears. Sears was a big place. You go get your appliances, things like that when I was a kid. But all three, Blockbuster, Circuit City, and Sears, have one thing in common, and that is, drum roll please, they're no longer in business. No longer in business. And they're no longer in business because all three of them failed to change or transform or transition with the times. I had a mentor of mine, his name is Aubrey Malphurs. And Aubrey Malphurs was awesome. He gave me this phrase. He said, Joshua, there's one thing that's true in the church world, in leadership, in organizations. You change or you die. You change or you die. And to be real honest with you guys, in today's America, in today's society, the church is facing the same thing that Blockbuster, Circuit City, and Sears has faced. And that is a decline in its impact in our culture. As a matter of fact, I have a few stats to share with you. This is done by Lifeway Research around 2019, 2020. The study analyzed church data from 34 Protestant denominations, which makes up about 60% of the churches in America, found that 4,500 churches closed in 2019, while only 3,000 new congregations were started. In the decade ending in 2020, 3,850 churches to 7,700 and houses of worship closed per year in the United States. That equals 75 to 150 congregations per week closed. 47% of Americans say they belong to a church, the Gallup poll found, which is the lowest in American history. And a lot of churches are unable to maintain their current facilities, properties, and they're having to sell off or they're having to close because of that. That adage, you either change or you die, is very, very true. And what's sad to me is that so many churches today, in a world that is completely different than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, refuse to change with the times, to present the gospel and to reach people in new, fresh, and innovative ways. Well, there's a story. If you're like, well, I don't know if change is in the Bible. I don't know if that even matters. There's actually a story. It's in Mark chapter 2, starting in verse 18. And I'm going to share with you this conversation that Jesus is having with his disciples and some Pharisees. So here we're going to pick it up in 18. Now, John's disciples and the Pharisees were fasting. So they're talking about John the Baptist. And people came and said to him, why do John's disciples and the disciples of the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast? So they come and say, John the Baptist's disciples fast, the Pharisees' disciples fast, but Jesus, your disciples don't fast. What's up with that? And Jesus said to them, can the wedding guests fast while the bridegroom is with them? As long as they have the bridegroom with them, they cannot fast. In verse 20, the days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast in that day. Verse 21, no one sews a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old garment. If he does, the patch tears away from it, the new from the old, and a worse tear is made. Verse 22, and no one puts new wine into old wineskins. If he does, the wine will burst the skins, and the wine is destroyed, and so are the skins. But new wine is for fresh wineskins. Pretty incredible conversation. He's being questioned about fasting, but Jesus, as he normally does, takes the conversation to a deeper level, and he's really talking about this idea of that change is coming, a new covenant is coming, and therefore we do not put the new covenant in old structures and old wineskins. We do not take unstretched cloth and put it on a pat or a hole in an old garment, because then it gets ripped away and a worse is made. So Jesus is coming and having this conversation, and I just kind of want to explain a few things in it. The Pharisees chided Jesus because he didn't force his disciples to fast. They're saying, but these disciples did, and John the Baptist's disciples did, but Jesus, yours doesn't. So therefore, they're giving Jesus the same expectation that John the Baptist and the Pharisees had. And yet Jesus is a change agent. He's transformative. He's a completely different person than all of those. Jesus informed them that he had not come to add a few new rules and regulations. He had something entirely new to impart. The Lord made it clear to those religious leaders that he hadn't come to patch an old system. He didn't come to say, well, some of those parts work. Let me just put a patch here. Let me just fix this here and all things will be good. No, he wasn't coming to patch an old system. He was coming to usher in a completely different and new system. A transition was about to be made. When the patch shrank, the garment would tear. When the fermented wine was put into the old wineskin, that it would burst. In a sense, this is what he's saying. The old forms of religion, the old forms of church will not work in a new world. It's not going to happen. Every unreached people group has to have a new method. Every new generation is an unreached people group. And so the things that are going to happen, that are going to reach the next generation of kids, the kids that are being born right here, right now, as you're watching this, it's going to take a different method. It's going to take something new. Because the old ways of doing it are not going to reach the new people. And so here's what I think oftentimes. People don't mind change. It's the transition that's hard. It's really the transition. Think about it. The first time that you got your smartphone and you had to go from dialing a phone or playing on your BlackBerry, which some of you don't even know what a BlackBerry is, or your flip phone or your Nextel little radio or whatever, and all of a sudden you open up this new sleek smartphone, this new device, it's really awesome, and all of a sudden I got to figure out how to work this. It works honestly the same. And now you're probably like, yeah, it works the same. I mean, I just pop up my dial and do, or I just talk into it and it calls somebody for me. But that initial time, all of a sudden you're having to relearn everything again. Doesn't mean that the smartphone wasn't going to be better. It just meant that there was a transition that had to happen. And the transition is hard because how do you turn this thing on? How do you turn this thing off? How do you get to the keyboard? How do you search the web? Like, I don't understand all of that. But as the transition goes, you get more comfortable and you're like, man, I can't even imagine my life without a smartphone or without an iPad. So I think most people embrace change. They see, hey, I can see that that it's needed, but transition is really hard. And so let's talk a little bit about that, because here's the thing: change and transitions challenges our existing categories. It challenges the existing categories that we live by. And all of a sudden, when there's a transition that comes, we're sitting there thinking, what in the world is this? I thought the world was this way. I thought it was like this. And now something has come in and I realize that it's changed to this other kind of thing over here. And I've got to get used to that now. In order to change, we must reorder our thought processes and see the same things in new ways. So let me give you one of those. The newspaper. How many of you remember your mom or your dad or your grandparent reading the newspaper every day? How many of you read the newspaper every day? Well, now we get up and we get the news on our phone. It just pops up. Or we go to our favorite website to get our news. Or we listen to it on the radio. It's the same thing. It's just changed. The means of getting the news has just changed. We're still getting the news, but we're getting it in a different way. It's a new way to look at the same things. When you're thinking about Jesus, and when people are thinking about Jesus in this day and time, back in the biblical times, this idea that the Messiah would come and suffer and serve and live in poverty and in humility, that was unthinkable. The Jewish people thought Jesus was coming back to rule and reign, but Jesus was an innovator. Jesus was a change agent. He wasn't coming to establish a kingdom that they were used to. He wasn't coming to patch up the old system. He wasn't coming to put old wine into new wineskin. He wasn't doing that. He was coming to do a whole new thing, a completely different thing. He was coming to usher in His kingdom and a new covenant that's completely different. And a transition was in order. So Jesus was an innovator. He was a change agent. And here's the deal. Every good leader, every great organization, and every great church is the same thing. They look for ways to adapt, to change, to innovate in order to push the mission forward. You either change or you die. That's the kind of the hard reality of it. So I want to propose to you a question before we move on. Because I bet some of you are watching this and maybe you're a little alarmed. Maybe you're upset. Maybe you're kind of like, yeah, absolutely. There's probably a bunch of different types of thoughts and processes at this point. But I want to give you one question that I want you to kind of think about through the rest of this message. And one question that I want you to talk about in your harvest homes. And that is this. What is the faith of the next generation worth? What's the faith of the next generation worth? Now, as you're pondering that, and we're going to come back and unpack it, I want to talk to you about two things. They're kind of paradoxical, but they're important. The first is what I would call closed hand, open hand. And here's what I mean by that. There are absolutely timeless beliefs and truths that we have as a people group, as followers of Jesus. Like Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through Him. We hold that with a closed fist. The reality of the Trinity, we hold it with a closed fist. The purpose of the church, we hold it with a closed fist. The sanctity of marriage, we hold it with a closed fist. All of those things, and there's a few more that we just hold with a closed fist. So sometimes when we talk about change, we think that we're going to actually change what we believe because the way we deliver it changes. That's not what I'm saying. We hold our fundamental beliefs that make us Jesus followers, we hold them with a closed fist. We never compromise. We never move on those. But the way we develop or the way we deliver the message, the method, we hold with open fists. Because what we want to do is be culturally relevant in the way we communicate the timeless gospel. And so what that looks like may be different today than it was 20 years ago, and it's going to be different 20 years from now than it is today. And so it's this idea we hold those biblical truths with a closed fist. We don't compromise on them one bit, no matter what that means. But the ways that we deliver that, the methods that we deliver, we hold with an open fist. And we allow God to use innovation, creativity to figure out ways to reach people in ways that maybe we've never done. Meaning we would do things that we've never done to reach people we've never reached. And so we hold it with a closed fist and an open fist. Open hand, I should say. I want to share just one real quick example that we had. COVID-19. COVID shut down most churches in America. Some for 3 months, some for 6, some for a year. And we were upset because we couldn't come together and hug and see each other and worship together. And in the midst of that, so many focused on that. But here's the great thing. At the same time that opportunity was delayed or wasn't able to happen for a while, a new opportunity opened up. And the opportunity was this, that churches could go online to reach a wider audience all over the world at the same time every single week, and the gospel was able to get to the nations in ways that had never been done before. If we had had a COVID-19 pandemic in the 1950s, we would have never been able to get the message of Jesus out if the churches had to close. But now, because of this thing of the internet, we can. The timeless truth never changed. The way we delivered it for a little bit did, and the way that we're going to deliver it is going to change. The second thing I want you to think about, outside of closed fist and kind of this open hand, is this. It's past context and future vision. Okay? So I want you to hang on with me. We're going to take a little stroll a little bit down church history lane. If we were to look back at our brothers and sisters who have led churches, been a part of churches in the past, what we would see is actual points where there was innovation. Let me give you a couple of examples. The Sunday night service. Did you know that the Sunday night service was originally started because pastors knew that in order to reach the people that they needed to reach, they would not be able to do the same things on Sunday morning? So instead of trying to blend the services or whatnot, they started a Sunday night service that was more about evangelism, reaching the lost. They did different things in their service so that they could reach the time of that day. And guess what? Over time, that Sunday night service, those people became believers, and then all of a sudden that Sunday night service turned into a time for believers, not something to bring in lost people. Just saying. How about organs in the church? So when you think about that, we love organs. My mom played organ for a long time. Well, organs started in bars. And to be more culturally relevant, we brought them into the churches. You think people were upset about that? I think so. How about guitars and drums? They were in the bars. To be more culturally relevant, we brought them into the church. You know people were upset about that. Ways to innovate. Think about the house church movement in China. Think about other ways that the church has gone out and been innovative to reach new people, right? So what we can take away is not that, oh, they had an organ in the bar back then, so let's put one in now. No. The way that we do that is we see cultural context, meaning the church in the past have found innovative ways to reach people. Thus, looking forward, we should find innovative ways to reach people as well that's culturally relevant today. What is the faith of the next generation worth? And with that, it brings me to a couple of things that I want to just share real quick. At Harvest Church, we say that we are for growth. What does that mean? What that means is that we are here to build an army, not an audience. We believe that our sending capacity is more important than our seating capacity. We believe that equipping people, calling them into mission, giving them opportunities to serve, and then allowing them to grow, and then allowing God to do with them what He will, send them on the mission field, send them to plant churches, make more disciples, reach lost people. That's what we want to do. We want to build an army, not an audience. We embrace change to discover what's next to advance the kingdom. I want you to know that at Harvest Church, we're going to hold those truths very, very close fist. But I want you to also know that the thing that I want you to get used to is that there will be change. We're going to be a church that seeks to reach people in the way Paul sought to reach the Jews and the Gentiles, and he became all things to all people that he might win a few. We're going to have that heartbeat at Harvest Church. So if things change, that's just going to be a normal thing, right? That doesn't mean from week to week, from month to month, but expect some change, because why? We want to reach people. That is in our name, is to reach people for the gospel. That is what Jesus calls us to do, is reach people for the gospel. And I read you those anemic church numbers. We don't want to be one of those churches. We want to reach people with the gospel of Jesus and see life change in their hearts and in their families. Can I get a big amen in our Harvest homes? Come on. And the second thing is, I want to talk to you about some philosophies of ministry with that. One of them is creativity. Innovation matters. We will seek to be creative in how we reach and engage people with the gospel. We're going to be creative, which means some things are going to fail. Not everything's going to work. But we believe that through creativity, we will find things that do work to reach people with the gospel. And that bold matters, or risk matters. We're going to be bold in our philosophy. We'll be willing to sacrifice what was and what is to find what's next to advance the kingdom. You know, I'm one of those that I really enjoy a good risk. Not everybody does, I understand that. But it's because I believe that it's essential to reach people. And I want our church to have the heartbeat that Paul had. I'll become all things to all people so that we might win a few. And that we're never afraid to take a risk, and we're never afraid to be creative, and we're never afraid to be innovative, and that we call people to mission. That we call people to mission, and we give them opportunities to serve and use their gifts so that they can go and do whatever God's called them to do. So here's the question. What is the faith of the next generation worth to you? I believe if you answer that question and you say nothing, my encouragement would be to evaluate your heart. Evaluate with Jesus. See what's going on and why you would say that. What is the faith of the next generation worth? If you say everything, then here's what I'm going to say. If we answer that question, the faith of the next generation is worth everything. And those are our grandkids and our future grandkids and our great-grandkids and kids that we don't even know and kids that haven't even been born yet. I want you to think of those faces and think of those hearts. But if we say that it's worth everything to reach the next generation, then what I'm going to say is that then we should be willing to give everything to reach the next generation, to be innovative and be creative and have the heartbeat and the vision of the people that are coming before us. I want us to have a vision of the people today and the people that are going to be here 20 years from now. Guys, we have an amazing opportunity in Conway, South Carolina. It is the #1 fastest growing area in the entire country. That is a gift that God has given us because He's bringing them from spiritually dead places. And He's planted us here so that we may reach them and share with them the timeless truths of God's Word, but also do it in bold and risky and creative ways so that more people may know Jesus and follow Him. If you have any questions about salvation, your Harvest Home leader would love to talk with you about that. God bless you.